This is the fourth letter of Decimus Fabius. To Rome, I pray for your well-being and safety. May God look after you in these fiendish times. Since I'm becoming more and more convinced that Claudio must be some form of adversary that God has sent to test us, or perhaps even the devil has his hands in the matter here. And as can be expected, with the loot they have gathered, the Franks are improving their facilities of war so that they can continue their devious conquests. However, at the moment Augusta Treverorum is once again besieged by Roman legions. However, I don't have too much faith in those because of how they have blundered this far, those sieges. And once again, Claudio is gathering his host and he's beginning to move. Against a new settlement. And this time it's Burgundii, which is the defenses there are just pathetic. However, we may have some hope as the Burgundii are clearly moving against the Franks in the north, so perhaps their intervention can give us some respite from the attacks of the Franks. And the brutes are even slaughtering their own people as they already had conquered Vicus Alemanni once, and they just plundered it, even though it was their countrymen in the settlement, and that's just barbaric. I don't know how they can do such a thing. And finally the Burgundii are attacking, was it Vicus Saxones? The defenders are few and they are rather tired. Of course they do have decent enough walls. I think they were stone walls they were having there. So they most certainly can inflict some damage to the invaders, but I'm confident that the Burgundii in the end will prove triumphant in the battle, because the garrisons really are already depleted. And according to my knowledge, the weather was fierce. To match the fight that was about to happen, there were some berserkers even joining the fray. Those guys can be just as dangerous to allies as they can be to the enemies, if they cannot have any guidance or control of their rage. The Burgundy host outnumbered the Franks 3-1, and the Franks or rather the Burgundii had much cavalry. So basically they should have no troubles at all taking care of the smallish Frank host. The towers were able to inflict some damage on the Burgundii. However, that was nothing critical, as there was almost a direct pathway from the gate to the city center where the Franks had fortified themselves. However, the light cavalry absolutely stood no chance against the enemy spearmen, and the berserkers were practically leading the charge as befits their particular fighting style. I pray that you don't ever have to watch how those brutes do fight when they get into berserker rage. It's just horrible to watch. They will eviscerate everything that comes onto their way. This time they focused on the Franks, but I hope that we never have to face them in battle. The battle in the town center was fierce, but in the end the Burgundy numbers proved to be too much for the defenders. They were wiped out, and the berserkers threw the Frankish spearmen left and right, as long as it was needed to take them all down. Their swords are almost the size of a man, and it takes great strength to swing those kind of weapons. And practically the battle was over, even if before it began. The Franks were able to take a third of the Burgundy host with them, but in the end it was clear defeat for the Franks. I'm just hoping that the Burgundy will move towards south, so they can actually threaten the Frankish holdings nearby. And it seems the siege of Augusta Treverorum has been lifted. The Romans, our countrymen, have left. And now it's interesting, will they move against Vicus Franki or Vicus Alemanni? At least that move has caused the Franks to reconsider their plan to move against Augusta Vindelicorum. However, Rodulf, hungry for honor, decided to leave some of his host to defend and take the rest of his army to the battle. which may have left their flank open in the north. So perhaps all hope is not lost for us recapturing some of the territory we have lost. However, in the west, the situation seems to be almost hopeless. Claudio's host is very strong, it's experienced, it has good quality weapons, and it has very good mercenaries with them. So it really is a wonder if somehow we are able to stop them there. And as I predicted, it was a mistake.
A most generous proposal.
That Rodulf made, because now Vicus Alemanni is besieged by a Roman host. And the defenses are rather meager, and there is Cornelius Bolanus next to Vicus Franki, so the Franks can expect no help from that direction. The only possibility is that Tancred leaves Augusta Treverorum to aid Vicus Alemanni. However, as I was afraid in the west, in Burgundii, Cneius the Angry had not done his duty to raise a proper host, and that left the city virtually defenseless and allowed the Frankish horde to capture it. And of course, they put almost everyone there to sword. And the host continued towards Arles and Massilia. However, next to Arles we have Constans Antio, a general who has fastly gathered everything he can scrape, mostly cavalry that has been readily available to move fast, to aid him, and thus he should be able to at least slow down the enemy advancement. I don't know if the news could get any worse, but the Frankish hosts are still growing. And Tancred decided to leave Augusta Treverorum and its stone walls so he could aid Vicus Alemanni. This of course could present an opportunity for Cornelius Bolanus to strike at Augusta Treverorum, but it remains to be seen what happens there. Meanwhile, Rodulf, emboldened by Claudio's success in the west, decides to attack against Augusta Vindelicorum, where the defenses are led by a brave Roman general, Gratianus the Lily-Livered, He has some garrison at his disposal, but the Franks clearly have numbers on their side. And of course the walls, the quality of the walls leaves much to be hoped for. And if this town is lost, the Frankish hordes have a clear road to northern Italy. And if they can get there, they can even pose a threat to the Eternal City itself. And as befits the recent events, during the battle it was snowing. Or at least the weather was very bad. And that clearly indicates something as an omen. Our Foderati infantry was surprised by the enemy hunters. They were able to open a fire in secret. However, they were able to take cover soon enough. However, they chose to defend the gate that was broken. And that meant that they were very vulnerable to missile fire. And the Frankish Barbarians were also able to knock down the walls. And that of course made their situation rather precarious. Or rather that made the defenders' situation rather precarious, because now the Franks were able to flank the defenders at the gate. And that was exactly what they were doing. And the Foderati just weren't brave enough. They were driven away. And that left the city gates defenseless. And there is still some hope, since some 150 brave heavy cavalrymen belonging to the general's bodyguard and some of our Sarmatian auxiliaries are ready to take on the enemy attack. And as the Frankish host was clearly winded, Rodulf ordered them to pause for a moment, so they could catch their breath before moving to engage. The enemies. And the cunning Franks were planning to set an ambush to the defenders. Their idea is clearly to lure the defenders to engage the infantry, and then to use their cavalry to flank them. And the bait was taken, at least by the Sarmatian auxilia. and the battle was joined. And the battle raged fierce. It was infantry versus horse, and at least the mercenaries were taking quite a heavy brunt from the enemy attack. But the Romans proved to be rather cowardly in this case, and they did not fight to the last man, as was expected of them, and thus the Franks managed to get the last gate before Italy. And they began to fortify the settlement right away and to train extra troops, and I'm afraid they will soon decide to move against Italy. To make situation even worse, Claudio is sending reinforcements from his newly acquired territories to the eastern front, where the Roman hosts are the strongest, and it's only appropriate that in the eyes of the world he has earned the nickname or an additional name of the Butcher, because the bloodbaths in which he is reveling are just horrible. To make situation even worse, the royal family of the Franks is growing through marriages and new family members. And not to be overshadowed by his father, Tancred has decided to take command of the Frankish host, and he is already moving towards Italy. And the Romans have lifted the siege of Vicus Alemanni, which of course is once again a foolish thing to do, because it only emboldens the Frankish offensive, because they are able to muster more troops, train them more, and then move against us in the south. I don't know what witchcraft Claudia used, but Arles, the army defending Arles, the army that was tasked to defend Arles, has left its post, and thus the road is clear once more for Claudio to approach or advance. And I'm very worried that Claudia will push to northern Italy from the west, while Tancred pushes from the north. And I'm not sure what kind of defenses we have in place, and are they enough to hold the Frankish advance in Italy. If somehow I could send this letter to you in person, so that it could reach you, I would most dearly urge you to leave Rome, to sail, for example, to Carthago, to Greece, to Eastern Roman Empire, because at the moment the situation is looking dire indeed. In northern Italy, Tancred was confronted by a Roman host. And I ideally hope that the Roman host will prove to be enough to beat the Franks. It is led by General I don't actually know his name, but Tancred seeked glory. Severus Pontius seeked glory and ordered his cavalry to move out first. The Roman host has formidable infantry, mostly comitatenses. There are some auxilia palatina among the troops as well, and those are not to be trifled with. However, despite my hopes, Tancred was not foolish enough to charge the Roman infantry. He was seeking an opportunity to engage the flanks, and fortunately the Roman cavalry was heavy Sarmatian auxilia. However, it might be that they saw the attacking Franks too late and were clearly surprised. The initial shock was rather devastating, and the Foederati infantry tasked to reinforce the Sarmatian auxilia withdrew, and that left Sarmatian auxilia alone, and they broke. So that means that the Roman host has no cavalry support left, excepting the general's bodyguard, which of course is formidable. But is it formidable enough is the question, as the Franks chose to target it next. This time the Foederati infantry was ready for the challenge, and it moved to engage the Frankish riders. However, Severus Pontius was already surrounded, and the Frankish host was able to beat him, kill him, and I don't even dare to describe what they did with the body. So, now the Roman host was leaderless. Some of them were chasing after the Frankish cavalry, but the Franks did have clearly the numerical superiority. They had half again as many men as the Romans did. The Franks had formed sealed walls, defensive formation, which they liked to use, and the archers opened fire, and the battle was about to be joined soon. As the Roman host was leaderless, the morale was weak, and as the Frankish cavalry moved to flank them, circle behind them, most of the men knew that the battle was lost, and they began to flee. And the Roman legions that once were believed to be invincible were beaten once again. And the Franks reigned supreme, and the pathway to Italy was wide open. I don't know if there was a single survivor. Perhaps some Sarmatian auxiliaries got away. But I doubt after this kind of defeat they are brave enough to report of their failure. Only a handful of Romans got away. And it was only a handful of casualties they were able to inflict on the Frankish host. And once again, Vicus Alemanni has been besieged, but once again the question remains, to what avail, to what it will avail. Since once again the Franks are gathering new troops to reinforce those they have lost, and as I was afraid, Mediolanum, the gate in northern Italy, or the first defense line in northern Italy, was fully depleted in the Fulis attack to the north. Constans Antio did return next to Arles, however, he decided not to help the city, and it easily fell to the Frankish hordes. And next to it, Massilia was left open for attack, and Claudio ordered his host forwards. He hired mercenaries to complement his somewhat depleted host, and in Arles the Franks began to recruit new troops. Once again, some good news from the north. The Celts, under leadership of Captain Uredak, have landed near Samaropriva, and with some luck they will besiege the settlement and perhaps put some more pressure on the Franks on the north, because their area has expanded. We cannot do anything but worry about it. And they are trying to ally themselves with other factions, and they are trying to get them to attack the Romans in the west. Perhaps they have even already attacked, as Salona has been. It has rebelled, or it has been razed and left to its own devices. The Frankish spies are even moving towards Hispania, and it might indicate that Claudio is willing to divide his host so that Tancred can take Italy and he himself will move against the Roman provinces in Hispania. However, the Celts have moved against the Franks, and that's hopeful news indeed. Because that way our armies in the eastern part of the Frankish kingdom could achieve so much more. And Augusta Vindelicorum is besieged by Captain Marioranus. He has clearly superior numbers, and as Vicus Alemanni is besieged by Cornelius Polanus, the situation might seem decent enough. However, the Frankish reinforcements are closing in, and that clearly indicates trouble for our troops. Massilia did fall, which actually was to be expected. And once again, Claudio only left a smallish garrison. His army is now mostly mercenaries. But nonetheless, he will continue to push forwards. And he's moving to help the besieged defenders of Arles. And he's hiring absolutely everyone who can hold a blade. And I'm afraid Constance Antio just don't have what it takes, all the troops it takes to beat Claudio the Cruel. It's good to know though that Claudio has turned westwards after capturing Massilia. It might mean that the Frank hosts will be combined in Italy. So perhaps the Emperor in Rome can raise enough proper legionaries to take down this dreaded host. Even though it's beginning to seem like that the Franks are having more legionaries in their ranks than the Romans do. And the Frankish reinforcements are joining the fray here. And at the same time, the Frankish main host is moving into position to move against the Romans. Some Foederati infantry charged bravely on the Frankish cavalry. However, they were soon flanked, and that spelled their doom. And unfortunately, the Roman general was slain in the battlefield, and practically that decided the battle. Some of the Romans made brave attempts to turn the tide of events, but they were too few, too late, and they too were broken. And once again Claudio did it. It seems his host is unbeatable, and I think that's one of the reasons why he is able to attract so many mercenaries. He has clearly set burning and pillaging as his main goals. As he has relinquished the construction projects and focused on just getting new troops to the field as soon as possible. And to make the matters even worse, Mediolanum was easily taken by Tancred. He didn't even suffer any casualties, and I'm really afraid what will happen in the northern Italy if this will continue. I would have much more to say, but I just cannot bear writing at this time. The situation is too dark indeed. I can only implore you, pray for the health of the Emperor, for the success of the Empire, and courage for the Roman troops in the field, and wisdom for their generals, so that they can abandon such folly that they have embraced previously, because it has taken only a bit over 10 years, and the whole of Gaul is now under the Frankish control, and even Italia is beginning to fall to them. Yours, Decimus Fabius.